Hey, good morning, Shiloh. Thank you for coming together this morning, gathering together as the church. For many of us, there is a increased level of excitement this morning as we look at the week ahead of us because, in case you haven't heard us talk about it enough yet, we are going to Africa. I know that a number of you have been praying for this trip, praying for us. We asked everybody over the last couple of weeks to be praying for this trip, and I feel very strongly that many of those prayers have already been answered. All 10 of us are going, some of us with new passports that were able to get those in 2 days. I have taken hundreds of people out of country at this point. I've never heard of somebody getting a new passport in 2 days. So Tim Downey, you win like some type of really great prize. I'm going to buy you something special in Kenya. But to all of you who have been praying, thank you. Please continue to pray for the trip. And what we want to see is unchanging. We want to see not only the ministry that Shiloh has been a part of for 5 years now, and Charles and Rael and the ministry there, the Lenya slums, the people and the churches. We want to see God moving. And I know that for the group of us who are going, when we come back, we will have been touched in ways that we never have before, simply by removing ourselves from this place. I think our hearts, our souls, our minds are going to come back different, never to be the same again. And so we covet your prayers. We ask that you pray for this trip, recognizing that God is able to do immeasurably more than we ask or imagine. And that's what we want to be a part of. So to all of you who have prayed, thank you. Please continue to pray for this trip. We are so excited to bring a report back. Certainly check social media feeds while we're there. I'm sure you will see plenty of updates. Today we are on week 2 of our series called Interrupted. And last week we kicked off this series with the recognition that none of us enjoy being interrupted. We don't like interruptions. We don't like the child hanging over our bed in the middle of the night staring at us while we sleep. We don't like children throwing up in our bed, on our pillows, on our comforter. Do we, Zach and Reagan? We don't like the solar panel guy knocking on our door in the middle of the day. We don't like the 6 phone calls a day that we get telling us that we've been pre-approved for a $60,000 loan. We don't like interruptions, and yet God has been using interruptions for thousands of years to draw people off of the path that they are on and to set them on a path that He has for them. Like we talked about last week, God has been doing this for a very long time, and He will continue to do this. For so many of us, while we try to remove interruptions, we try to get past interruptions, often we stay so preoccupied, so busy with insignificant things that we don't allow these like supernatural interruptions to take place, or we don't recognize them. We recognize that there is value in keeping our eyes and our ears open to the interruptions of God. Last week we looked at 1 Samuel 3, and in 1 Samuel 3, as God is calling to Samuel while he is in bed, Samuel doesn't recognize what it is at first, or the second time that it happens. And in fact, it took Eli the prophet to tell him, when you hear this voice next time, stay in bed because God is calling to you. And I want to say this to all of you. There will be times in your life where God, much like He did with Samuel, wakes you up in the middle of the night so that He can speak to you. There will be times in your life where God interrupts your sleep, and as you lay there in the darkness, in the quiet, with no phone in front of you, with no noise, with no distractions, God will interrupt you so that He can clearly speak to you. There is value in recognizing that sometimes that's the way that God works. Sometimes God does work in the middle of the night in the quiet. Sometimes God uses a friend to interrupt you. Sometimes God uses scripture to interrupt you, but God is in the business of interrupting us. We talked about last week also that there are seasons where God is quiet. where we don't see miracles, we don't hear his voice. There's not a lot of these interruptions taking place. And then there are seasons of life where God is moving and God is shaking and God is speaking and God is interrupting. We are definitely in a season of life right now where God is moving, where God is speaking, where he is interrupting, and where he is shaking things up a little bit. We talked about this last week. I've spoken about this with a number of you privately and publicly. The pastors of Fort Collins met again this week and discussed this very same thing. Looking around, we're like, something is taking place. Something is going on. God is calling people to him. God is moving in the lives of the church, and he is moving in the lives of people who have not been a part of the church and calling them to him. Even after I recorded the message last week when I packed up here from the tavern and was leaving, the bartender here, who I usually give her a hard time, we kind of harass each other back and forth because she has turned on music in this room while I'm recording in the past. And when I walked out of here, I was like, where's my music? And she's like, I didn't turn it on. I knew that you were back there, but all I've been listening to lately anyways is worship music. And totally caught me off guard, which led to a 15-minute conversation about how she went to church at Christmas and just cried the whole time because she felt like God was moving and she can't really put her finger on what's going on. And she ended up being baptized 3 weeks ago. God is doing something. He is interrupting the lives of people all over the place, certainly in northern Colorado right now. And we're beginning to hear more and more about it happening all over the country. God is moving. God is speaking. God is interrupting. Do you have the ears to listen? Do you have the eyes to see? Do you have the heart that cares? And have you allowed space in your life to see and to recognize those interruptions? Open up your Bibles to 1 Kings. And today what I want to do is I want to look at two stories of God interrupting people. Two stories that speak differently, and yet they have these similarities that are found in both of them. Two stories where God interrupts the lives of people while they weren't expecting it. In 1 Kings chapter 19, I want to read about the calling of Elisha. For those of you that know your Old Testament, Elisha was a contemporary. He was a prophet that was called by God, but God used Elijah to go call him. Elijah and Elisha, while they are contemporaries, Elisha will be a successor to Elijah later on. And both of them are a part of very significant moments in the Old Testament, a number of significant moments in the Old Testament. And in 1 Kings 19, beginning in verse 19, actually, you have Elijah who is going to find Elisha after God has called him to do so. And look at the way that God interrupts Elisha's life. 1 Kings 19, verse 19. So Elijah went from there and found Elisha, son of Shaphat. He was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen, and he himself was driving the 12th pair. Elijah went up to him and threw his cloak around him. Elisha then left his oxen and ran after Elijah. Let me kiss my father and mother goodbye, he said, and then I will come with you. Go back, Elijah said. What have I done to you? So Elisha left him and went back. He took his yoke of oxen and slaughtered them. He burned the plowing equipment to cook the meat and gave it to the people, and they ate. Then he set out to follow Elijah and became his servant. In these few verses, you have Elijah coming to call Elisha, to interrupt Elisha's life at the direction of God. When Elijah throws his cloak around Elisha, he's signifying that one day you will take my role, you will take my position, my place. And for the people of that time, the cloak was the most important article of clothing that they had. And so when Elijah takes his off and throws it around Elisha, Elisha recognizes that God has called him to something great. You have Elisha who recognizes that this calling is going to take him away from his family. And so he looks at Elijah and he's like, hey, let me go tell my mom and dad goodbye. And Elijah's like, hey, I'm not the one who's called you to this. In other words, you can do whatever it is that you need to do. This has nothing to do with me. This has everything to do with you and God. And so Elisha goes back, and it's significant because Elisha burns the ships. For Elisha, they have 12 yoke of oxen, so 24 oxen that they're plowing this field with, which signifies the success of Elisha. He has been successful in his business, successful in his career, successful that he has 24 oxen and that he has a field big enough that requires 24 oxen, and he has 11 other men working for him. He's driving this 12th pair when Elijah shows up. And when he recognizes that God is calling him into something great, he slaughters the 24 oxen. He burns out all of the equipment that he had. That's the fire that he uses to cook the meat, and he gives it to all of the people. For Elisha, he recognized that God was interrupting his life that day, and that God was calling him out of a career, out of a profession, away from his family, and into something significant. When Noah was called to build an ark, Noah wasn't expecting to be used by God, but God interrupted him. When Moses was called to lead a nation out of slavery, Moses wasn't planning on doing that. In fact, he didn't even like the idea of doing it, but God interrupted him. When David was called to lead the Israelite nation and to become king, David wasn't expecting to be king. He wasn't planning on leaving his career as a shepherd, but God interrupted him. Jonah wasn't planning on telling the sin city of his day that, hey, if you don't turn to God, he will destroy this place. Jonah didn't like that idea at all, but God interrupted him. Mary and Joseph weren't planning on trying to sell this virgin pregnancy story to their friends and family, and yet God interrupted them. All of these people were busy with careers, busy with life. They had a vision that God interrupted. For you this morning, in your own life, in your own day-to-day, in your own careers, in your own retirement, in your own building of a family and building of a network and living in this place, God may interrupt you as well and call you out of a career, or call you off of the path that you have been on and call you to something significant. What's interesting, what should be recognized from these stories, is that for so many people, their self-doubt tells them that God will not call them out of the place that they are in, and yet God does it. For many of you this morning, you look at these stories and you're like, yeah, these are great stories, that God did amazing things through these amazing people, and yet the people didn't think they were amazing. The people didn't think that they were significant. The people didn't think that God would call them or that he had prepared them to do something great, and their own insecurities almost clouded their ability to see the interruption of God. And for some of them, God had to convince them and walk them through that time of self-doubt. For you this morning, it would be foolish of you to think that God might not call you out of the place that you are currently in your life and call you into something new. It would be foolish of you to think that this path that you are walking, that you love, is the path that you'll be on forever, because God may also call you off of that path and onto a new path altogether. Have you surrendered your heart, soul, mind, and strength to God? If you knew that God was calling you to do something, to be something, to say something, would you do it? If you knew that God was interrupting your life today and calling you to something new, would you step into that? Would you leave your comforts and what you have to pursue God to a place that he is calling you to go? For so many of us here today, we spend so much of our lives trying to get comfortable and trying to be a little more comfortable and a little happier today than we were yesterday, and happier tomorrow than we are today. And we try to eliminate the discomfort in life, and we want the path of least resistance. And so we're paving and doing and accomplishing all of these things. And yet God might call you away from comfort. God might call you to a place of sacrifice. He might call you to a place of sacrificing your time, or sacrificing your funds, or sacrificing your future, or sacrificing something for the kingdom. And when you find yourself obedient to that calling, That is where you will find purpose. That is where you will find a joy that cannot be snatched from you. That is where you will find a sense of satisfaction that maybe you have never experienced before. And for all of us, God is calling us to something this morning. Are you listening? The second story that I want to look at is in Judges 6, and you can open your Bibles to that. In Judges 6, you have the Amalekites, a group of people that were always in opposition to Israel, and the Midianites. These two people who have been opposing the Israelites since they came out of slavery. In Judges 6, you have a man named Gideon who is hiding. He's on this threshing floor where he is separating the wheat from the chaff. You would throw this into the air, and that which could not be used or eaten would blow away, and that which was good, which was heavier and denser, would fall to the ground. Normally you would do this up on a hillside where the wind would blow more of this chaff away. But here for Gideon, because of the oppression of these people, he's hiding in a threshing floor. It's recessed in the ground. There's not a lot of wind. And what the people were doing, the Amalekites especially, they would come in and they would take what Israel had grown. These two opposing nations would come in and just wipe out the crops and wipe out the livestock of Israel. And so Israel as a nation is hiding. Here, the story of Gideon, as Gideon is hiding, feeling threatened. He has an encounter with God that changes the rest of his life. And it was here on this threshing floor that God interrupts his life. And I want to read this story with you this morning. Judges chapter 6, beginning in verse 1. The Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord, and for 7 years he gave them into the hands of the Midianites. Because the power of Midian was so oppressive, the Israelites prepared shelters for themselves in mountain clefts, caves, and strongholds. Whenever the Israelites planted their crops, the Midianites, Amalekites, and other eastern peoples invaded the country. They camped on the land and ruined all the crops all the way to Gaza and did not spare a living thing for Israel, neither sheep nor cattle nor donkeys. They came up with their livestock and their tents like swarms of locusts. It was impossible to count them or their camels. They invaded the land to ravage it. Midian so impoverished the Israelites that they cried out to the Lord for help. When the Israelites cried out to the Lord because of Midian, he sent them a prophet who said, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I brought you up out of Egypt and out of the land of slavery. I rescued you from the hand of the Egyptians, and I delivered you from the hand of all your oppressors. I drove them out before you and gave you their land. I said to you, I am the Lord your God. Do not worship the gods of the Amorites in whose land you live, but you have not listened to me." The angel of the Lord came and sat down under the oak in Ophrah that belonged to Joash the Abiezrite, where his son Gideon was threshing wheat in a winepress to keep it from the Midianites. When the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon, he said, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." "Pardon me, my Lord," Gideon replied, "but if the Lord is with us, why has all of this happened to us? Where are all his wonders that our ancestors told us about when they said, 'Did not the Lord bring us up out of Egypt?' But now the Lord has abandoned us and given us into the hand of Midian." Take note of what happens when a country turns its back on God. Verse 14, the Lord turned to him and said, "Go in the strength you have and save Israel out of Midian's hand. Am I not sending you?" "Pardon me, my Lord," Gideon replied, "but how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family." The Lord answered, "I will be with you, and you will strike down all the Midianites, leaving none alive." Gideon replied, "If now I have found favor in your eyes, give me a sign that it is really you talking to me. Please do not go away until I come back and bring my offering and set it before you." And the Lord said, "I will wait until you return." Gideon went inside, prepared a young goat, and from an ephah of flour he made bread without yeast. Putting the meat in a basket and its broth in a pot, he brought them out and offered them to him under the oak. The angel of God said to him, "Take the meat and the unleavened bread, place them on this rock and pour out the broth." And Gideon did so. Then the angel of the Lord touched the meat and the unleavened bread with the tip of the staff that was in his hand. Fire flared from the rock, consuming the meat and the bread, and the angel of the Lord disappeared. When Gideon realized that it was the angel of the Lord, he exclaimed, "Alas, sovereign Lord, I have seen the angel of the Lord face to face." But the Lord said to him, "Peace, do not be afraid. You are not going to die." So Gideon built an altar to the Lord there and called it "The Lord is Peace." To this day, it stands in Ophrah of the Abiezrites. That same night, the Lord said to him, "Take the second bull from your father's herd, the one 7 years old. Tear down your father's altar to Baal and cut down the Asherah pole beside it. Then build a proper kind of altar to the Lord your God on top of this height. Using the wood of the Asherah pole that you cut down, offer the second bull as a burnt offering." So Gideon took 10 of his servants and did as the Lord told him. But because he was afraid of his family and the townspeople, he did it at night rather than in the daytime. In the morning, when the people of the town got up, there was Baal's altar demolished, with the Asherah pole beside it cut down, and the second bull sacrificed on the newly built altar. They asked each other, "Who did this?" When they carefully investigated, they were told, "Gideon, son of Joash, did it." The people of the town demanded of Joash, "Bring out your son. He must die because he has broken down Baal's altar and cut down the Asherah pole beside it." But Joash replied to the hostile crowd around him, "Are you going to plead Baal's cause? Are you trying to save him? Whoever fights for him shall be put to death by morning. If Baal really is a god, he can defend himself when someone breaks down his altar." So because Gideon broke down Baal's altar, they gave him the name Jerubbaal that day, saying, "Let Baal contend with him." As you look at the story of Gideon, you see a man who is full of fear, who is full of doubt, who is full of insecurities. When the angel of the Lord approaches him and greets him as mighty warrior, you can almost hear the sarcasm in Gideon's voice, where he's like, "Excuse me, like, that's not me. Like, I'm hiding here in the winepress on purpose. I'm not the mighty warrior. In fact, I'm the weakest in my family, and my family, this clan, is the weakest of everybody here. You have the wrong guy." What's interesting about Gideon, though, is that while he had fear and doubt and insecurity, he was obedient. When God calls him to go cut down these pagan altars, he does so in the middle of the night because he's afraid, but he does it. You see with Gideon that it's okay to struggle and to wrestle with doubt and insecurities. It's okay to have these feelings of inadequacy while also being obedient to God. For some of you this morning, you wrestle with your own insecurities. You're not this or you're not that. Or maybe, like Gideon, you point to the past as somehow a disqualifier of why you can't do something in the future. For some of you, maybe you look at the failure you've had in life, maybe a moral failure, maybe the failure as a father or a mother or a husband or a wife. You've had outbursts of anger, you've been unfaithful with your money, and you've been robbing God with your tithes. And you look at all of these things and you're like, "I'm not the person. I can't do what God is calling me to do." And you don't even begin to entertain the idea that God might call you to do something significant. Your insecurities and your doubts do not disqualify you from being used by God in the future. Your failures in the past and even your failures of today do not disqualify you from being called by God to do something great. You may feel insignificant. You may look at yourself in the mirror and just see all of this emptiness and brokenness. And yet God looks at you and says, "You are exactly the person that I need to do this." Those insecurities of your past that you think disqualify you from being used by God may be the very things that actually qualify you to be used by God. Those failures in the past that Satan reminds you of all the time may be exactly what God needs in somebody to be used in a way that he needs somebody used. The thing in the past about yourself that you hate so much may be the exact thing that qualifies you to be used in the future. For Gideon, in verse 13, He asks like this age-old question of like, God, why are these good things happening to bad people? Why are bad things happening to good people? And God explains to him, he's like, this isn't good people suffering unjustly. These are people who have turned their back on God and are suffering the consequences of it. We get this wrong also frequently. And we look around us and we're like, God, why are you allowing these bad things to happen? And we fail to recognize that often these things that are happening are the consequences of our rebellion against God. Like Gideon, sometimes we fail to recognize that. And sometimes we also ask this question, God, why are you allowing bad things to happen to good people? At the root of this question that Gideon asks, though, is disappointment. Disappointment in himself, disappointment in who he is, and even disappointment in God. And we've all been there. We've all been disappointed in ourselves. We've all been disappointed in who we are or who we aren't. And we've all been disappointed in God. And we can ask those questions and we can wrestle with doubt and still be exactly the person that God needs us to be. For some of us, we think that that disappointment or that doubt somehow removes us from the position of leadership, while God says that's exactly what I need in the person who is going to lead. In verse 25, as Gideon tears down these pagan altars, he's afraid, he's scared. He does in the middle of the night. Some might call him a coward, but he was faithful and he was obedient, which was why in Hebrews, he is considered one of the heroes of faith. Do not think that your doubt, your insecurities, or your failures prevent you or will keep you or should keep you from being obedient to God. If God has called you to do something, if he has called you to move, if he has called you to say, if he has called you to stand, if he has called you to speak hope into something, or if he has called you to maybe confront something, whatever it may be, obey. Remain faithful. Even in those insecurities and those doubts, remain faithful. Gideon was interrupted. Gideon didn't feel like he belonged. Gideon pointed to his past as somehow a reason for being disqualified. Both Elisha and Gideon needed to let go of something from their past so that they could take hold of what God was calling them to in their future. For those of you who struggle with your past, God is a redeemer, meaning that he takes that which has been broken and uses it for good. He redeems, he liberates, and he delivers. This morning, all of you, take a look around you. Listen. Where is God moving in your life today? What is he interrupting? What is he calling you to do? What is he calling you to give up or to destroy? What comforts is he calling you to let go of for the sake of the kingdom? For all of us this morning, regardless of our failures, regardless of our insecurities, regardless of what we see when we look in the mirror, God has prepared you, and you are exactly the person he needs you to be today. For some of you, before you can step into what God is calling you to, you may need to let go of some things. For some of you, before you can step into what God is calling you to do that is significant and mysterious and not fully understood, but exciting, you may need to kill some sin in your life. You may need to tear down some altars. You may need to let go of the career or the past that is behind you so that you can embrace what it is that God is calling you to. This morning, God is interrupting you. Do you see it? Do you hear it? And are you willing to follow it?
It matters why we do this. On the night he was betrayed, Jesus broke bread. He gave it to his disciples. Take and eat. This is my body. He took a cup. Drink from it, all of you. This is my blood of the covenant. It is poured out for many, for the forgiveness of sins. It matters how we do this. Let each of us look at our lives Let us recognize our sin. Let us see the grace of God in the body and blood of Christ, broken for us, poured out for our forgiveness. It matters that we do this. Let us eat the bread, drink from the cup, remember the Lord's death in our place on the cross, looking for his return.